Welcome to the Dead Pixel Society podcast, the photo imaging industry's leading news source. Here's your host, Gary Pageau.
The Dead Pixel Society podcast is brought to you by Media Clip, Photo Finale, and Advertech Printing. Hello again and welcome to the Dead Pixel Society podcast. I'm your host, Gary Pageau, and today we're joined by professional photographer and industry gadfly, Lynn Cartia. Lynn, how are you today?
Gary, I am fantastic. How are you doing?
We're doing great today. Tell us a little bit about where you are in your business and where you are geographically.
Well, geographically, I'm in a chair at my desk. I'm in New Mexico, where I am in my business. I have been in the industry. I almost don't want to tell you how many years, because in dog years, I would have been dead a long time ago.
Okay.
But I have done this since I've been in the photography industry since I was 19.
Okay.
So like 10 years ago, Gary. No, I've been for many, many moons. Many decades have passed.
Well, how did that start to get into the industry? Did you start out on, shooting it through somebody else's studio, or how did that work?
It started, I was unhappy where I was working. Like I said, I was 19, I was in college, and I started working at a studio. And I remember that I was in college at the time, and I would sit in like my classes and I'd be bouncing my leg because I couldn't wait for it to be over so I could get to work, so I could be immersed in that. It was unlike anything I had ever experienced. And, it just snowballed from there. There's never been a time that I don't want to do this.
So what kind of studio was it? Was it like seniors, graduation? Was it?
It was a portrait studio. So it was
A little bit of everything.
Family, and a little bit of everything, babies. It was.
So, and then how long from there did you then work there and then move on to doing your own shop, your own place?
Oh gosh, probably about, I'm going to say about 5 years.
Okay. So you're in your mid 20s and you decide, listen, this is my passion. This is what I'm going to do. And you start your own thing. So that was what, 2 years ago, maybe?
Exactly.
Okay.
I'm really new.
Okay. Well, how a lot of people encountered you at first, at least that's where I did, was through an alter ego that you had.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about Missy and where Missy came from?
Yeah, Missy came about because I went to lunch with a fellow photographer in my state. And we went to lunch and we were talking about the state of the industry. And this was back in 2011, I think it was. So 10 years ago. And at the time, which we've kind of gotten away from, thank heavens, you would go to the trade shows and you'd go to the conferences, and everything was camera bags for women, and everything was the cutesy little straps on the camera, and it was just, everything was like the accessory. I became a photographer for the accessories because they're darling. And so at this lunch, I remember with the macaroni grill, I started improvising. I might have a little bit of that background. And I started riffing on this, kind of, I'm just in it because it's fun and I get to wear the pretty things, and I don't know how the camera works, and I think the piece for professional on the camera doll. I did this whole bit. I just riffed it, and he laughed so hard. He was like, you need to make a video for me because I need to watch this when I get frustrated. And I said, okay. So I actually came home and I made a video, and I couldn't send it because it was too long. And I'm like, oh, forget it. I'll just make a YouTube account. I had no idea. So I made 2, I sent it, we're laughing. And then I get a call in December. This was like the end of summer. I get a call in December from a well-known photographer that I know, who used to be in New Mexico, no longer is. And he asked for Missy. And he called the studio. And I'm like, I didn't even know what he was talking about. I'm like, well, I know who this is. And my studio manager is like, you got to call. It's kind of weird. So I called. I had not known that there was this stupid little video that somebody found it, and then it just got exploded. And that's where Missy started. And it was really addressing the absurdities in the industry by being absurd, by making myself see this. And in fact, I would have people that would message me and say, I used to really dislike you because I saw myself in you. And then I realized, oh, that's probably why I don't like it. So a wake up call. So for that, it was fun. And then people started asking really serious questions. They were like, they wanted to know business questions. They wanted to know sales questions, things about printing and why I should do it and how are things done. And I found myself not content to give them a flippant Missy answer, because I felt like they deserved more than that, because they were really serious in their
Missy was a character. I mean, that sort of thing. I mean,
right. So I couldn't answer like her, but I was getting more and more and more of these. And so I thought, I can't answer in a parody fashion. I have to be completely honest, because it would do a disservice if I did anything other than that. And so, so Missy morphed to Lynn. And so here I am.
One of the things that I found interesting about the Missy character is it really focusing on sort of the entry-level lifestyle that photographers aspired to. Like you said, P is for program. I get all these cute gadgets and why, and it's really, I'm on the Nikon team, yay. And then they would go to shows and sort of live that sort of experience as well. And that seemed to be, that's where conferences and shows sort of became social events rather than educational events. It's
funny because, and you and I talked a little bit about this before during our kind of warm up before the podcast, and that is, you did see a lot of people promote kind of that lifestyle. And to be honest, you still do. I joke that I know the pandemic's coming to a close because the workshops are now coming out of the woodwork again, the online thing.
Right.
And so you see people who sit in a room and they listen to a story from a stage and they believe every word of it, because why wouldn't they? They're brand new. They don't know what they don't know. A seasoned photographer is sitting in the crowd like me going, can I ask a question? Because of course I wouldn't do that, but knowing that so much of this is because there is a product to sell, or join my Facebook group, and then we're going to have these retreats, and then we're going to buy my stuff. And so it became a lot of that, and it just kind of grew that kind of mentality. And I think we might be seeing that start to happen again. I don't know. We saw a lot of that, after 2008, we had the recession. And
what happened was people got laid off from their jobs, so they decided they want to be a photographer, and they kind of rushed into the industry, because we saw that in the PMA world. And it was just kind of fascinating. And then one of the things you've been commenting on is the workshop is really the business. Photography is not the business.
I tell you true. Okay, so I travel. I'm not as well traveled as a lot of people, I'm sure, but I get around, Gary. And so when I go places, I make it a point to look on the old Google and see who's here. Like, who do I know who's like a workshopper, rock star kind of, I think we've retired the rock stars. I'll go to Nashville, I'll do it. I'll go to LA, I'll do it. Wherever I am, I'm going to go look and see. And it is amazing to me, the lack of presence that people who are very big within the industry have within their own community. Right. So they're known within the industry at large. Right. But as far as like a recognized brand, business reputation within their own city, not so much. And so there's a disconnect there. And I don't think that new photographers always realize that. They're like, oh, they're so famous and popular and successful, and then try to find their studio.
They can't make payroll, or they don't have any assistants. I mean, that's the thing I hear from other people in the industry sort of in this realm is, you have the folks who are rock stars. They're bumming drink tickets out at the reception that night. So it's a weird sort of thing, how the lack of actual credentials in sales or business or marketing, because if you're good at the Insta and you're good at the Twitter, and maybe you can do a TikTok or two, you get a following, and all of a sudden you're credible.
I had someone, little side note, I had someone ask me to come speak at a conference, and I thought long and hard about it, because I'm like, I don't know if I want to go and do this conference. But I thought, okay, who else is speaking? I looked at the lineup and I'm like, oh boy, I felt like which of these things is not like the other. I was like, oh, this is, but I thought, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it because I think it could be refreshing. I think it could be fun.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to keep in mind who's there, and I will tread cautiously, but at the same time, because I don't drop names. I don't do things like that. That's not who I am. And I remember that there were a couple of the rock stars. I know who they are. I shan't say their names. They had a hard time with me. And so the organizer of this conference, and it was annual. I don't think they do it anymore. I think it kind of just fizzled out. It sent me an email and said, "I've got a couple concerns. Now here I am. Now I'm in this thing. This is, I live it, I breathe it, I work it.
Mm-hmm.
This is my bread and butter. There is no plan B. This isn't a side hustle. This is what I do. It puts food on the table. It pays for my kids, everything. And has for years." But they wanted me to give proof to the other workshoppers that I was legit.
Because they had not seen you on the circuit.
I was like, maybe, if we all want to put in our income tax returns, I would be thrilled to do so.
Mm-hmm.
I would love to put my corporation up. You put yours up, you put yours up. Let's all go look. They didn't want to do that. So I'm like, okay, well, why do I have to prove when you don't have to prove? And that kind of goes back to the vetting process. And it's not just for the industry as a whole. It's very disappointing when you see these large organizations not thoroughly vetting their speakers who are teaching a new generation of photographers. I always encourage people, don't count on them to do it. You do it. Mm-hmm. You've got the Google, you have the internet, anybody can be anything online, right? How easy is that? But you need to do your own homework on this as well, or, you're going to get surprised really fast.
So did you do that event, or did they bail on you?
I was so taken aback by the request, because the people who were there, I knew for a fact had no business. I mean, I knew it, like could prove it, knew it. And I wasn't going to do that because I wasn't going to be embarrassing. But to the organizer, I did say, listen, I'm going to tell you right now, their business is workshopping. They do not make their money with their camera and a studio. Mm-hmm. They make it selling their goods to other photographers. It's always funny to me when people say, I had a studio for 3 years or 5 years, and then I closed it so I could teach. And it was highly successful and profitable. And I'm like, listen, if you're closing a successful and profitable business to workshop, I don't think I want you teaching me about business, because why would you do that? Right? Yeah, it didn't add up. So no, long story short, no, I did not do that conference.
You chose not to.
I chose not to. Yeah. Well, association, you got to be careful.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because we, in the PMA world, we did conferences all the time, and we kind of ran into that as well, mm-hmm. a little bit, because you'd have sort of the rule of thumb was, if you've got somebody who's super eager to present, do some, vet them, figure that out, because they may have another agenda, right? They may be looking to sell their business. They may be looking to do something else. And in the photography world, the photographer world, I should say, you've also got the sponsorship angle, right? Because you've got different vendors who, are basically paying for the session, right? And the event organizer has to kind of accommodate that, because that's where the money is. So it is interesting.
It is tricky. And I think you just have to be careful. And I think there has to be an accountability too. And that's something I speak of quite often, or I did pre-COVID. To talk photography during COVID. It was just so dumb. Why am I going to talk about in-person sales and print your photographs when, people are shut down? It was just dumb. So it's kind of nice to be back talking about it again.
Well, what's interesting is you made a comment once or something about, this one stuck with me, was that be careful of a presenter or an instructor whose only pictures are from their workshops.
True. It's true. Or you see the same models used over and over again. Mm-hmm. You're like, oh, because it's not a fresh body of work, which means there is not, you're not seeing new clients. And I'm okay with repeat clients. I get it. I post repeat clients. I did a family and then they come back, 3 years and do it again. And sure, but I'm talking the same people and everything that, and I've seen these workshops too, where mentioning sponsors, you might have a lighting sponsor. Mm-hmm. And they will come in and set up the freaking lights.
Mhm.
And I'm like, whoa. So that the workshop giver, look, I'm using air quotes like anybody can even see us. You can see me, but
They were implied.
yeah, they just have to come in and pick up the camera and shoot. And it's not like they gave the instructions. It's
Right.
like, well, you just said it this way. They set it up and then so it's a lot of style over substance.
Mhm.
And I think that, and where do you not find that in the world? It's everywhere. Certainly.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's certainly not exclusive to photography by any means.
Not at all.
So brag a little bit about your business itself.
I work damn hard and I don't think people know how hard I work.
Mhm.
I don't talk about that aspect
Mhm.
of me a lot. When I got into this whole talk about photography and people kind of knew my name, and I've always wanted, it's the way I run my business too. I've always wanted it to be about the people and not about me.
Right.
It's not like, oh, I had my best year ever in 2019. I had my second best year ever in 2019. That is true. Right before COVID hit, my second best year in 30 years. And it was awesome. And this year's shaping up. I'm happy with 2021 thus far. I was nervous coming into it. I worked very, very hard. I don't, especially during the summer, a day could start at 9 and then I don't get home till 9:30 at night. Because that's how it works.
Right.
I believe in being incredibly accessible to your clients.
Mhm.
I'm not just don't bother me with an email. Yeah, you better bother me with an email and I'll respond to it just as soon as I can. And not that that's wrong that people don't do that, because you have to decide what's best for you and yours. It's just, I've always run a very client forward, client focused business. It's never me, my, mine, I, look at me, look at this, I'm this, that. It's always them.
Mhm.
And it's held me in good stead. I'm sure there's someone who could argue that for them. I've become all that in a bag of chips and people love it. Well, maybe they do. But I can tell you the proof is in the pudding.
Right.
And it's been a great life with the core values that I believe when it comes to running a business. I mean, I believe strongly in being a salesperson first and a photographer second. I always have. I've always believed that you can be the best at what you do and make these, jaw-dropping images. But if you can't sell your work, you are not going to make money. And all it will ever be is a great hobby. And you'll be someone who was just a great photographer. So it depends on your goal, and that's okay. But if your goal is to run a business, you got to run it like a business. Otherwise, it is just a hobby. So I've done that for a long, long time. And I'm thrilled to still be doing it.
So what would be a good resource for photographers to get sales training and advice? Because you don't always see that at conferences.
You don't see that. PPA used to have the M&M conference, the Marketing and Management Conference. And this is when PPA's main convention was always held in the summer. And then they would have their M&M in January, and it was in Vegas. And they would bring in, they had photography people, but they would bring in non-photography folks who just talked about sales. That's where I first encountered Jeffrey Gitomer. They brought Jeffrey Gitomer in, and I'm like, who is this man who's walking down the aisle saying, you know what happens when you give someone your brochure? It's like you just threw up on him. He was brutal, and it was wonderful. And I followed him ever since. It's like, yeah, okay, the sale, I'm in. I think that you have to look beyond your industry. I always say that you have to find people who are doing what you want to do. And it can be difficult. You have to put some legwork in it because they often won't be on a stage.
Right.
They're busy doing what they're doing.
Yeah.
So you have to scout them out, watch what they do, look at how they market, and then look for inspiration beyond it. I joke all the time, and this is going to make me sound like I'm 89 years old. Some of the past greats, the Zig Ziglars of the world, those sales concepts, they don't change.
Right.
Those are the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow. And then, today's Gitomers who kind of forward that mentality, because sales is a mentality.
Well, it's funny. I think I've seen you mention John Acuff once or twice.
Oh yeah, John Acuff.
Yeah.
I bought his calendar. I never used it. Yeah.
I just finished his latest book and soundtracks for those listening who want to check it out. And he actually, in his podcast, he referenced Zig Ziglar, and he talked in the book. He talks for a chapter about Zig Ziglar, which I remember.
Oh, wow.
I remember at PMA, we had Zig Ziglar once, cost a fortune, but that was, the level of people we tried to.
And he was worth every
He
penny,
was worth
Gary.
every penny. Well, exactly. Yeah, that was always some of the smartest people at a conference. You don't look for the people in the front. You look for the people in the back who are like kind of know everything, but they're kind of, and you just look to see what they're taking notes on.
Right. That's right. I remember listening to Zig Ziglar on a cassette tape. Kids, if you don't know what that is, are these little plastic things with look like film inside them, and you put them in your car and you press play and fast forward. But I had the whole library of all of Zig Ziglar things. I had a little album thing I keep in my car and I put it in, and on road trips and whatever, I just listened to that because, I thought this is right on. And those Zigisms, they still buzz around in the back of my brain. So yeah.
What I think is funny is, as we've gotten more technological and more social media-y and things like that, people think the rules have changed, and they really haven't. The medium may change, but the rules of selling and business really haven't.
They haven't. People always want to feel valued. Mm-hmm. They want to feel appreciated. They want to feel as though they matter, mm-hmm. and their opinions matter. That's timeless. People, for example, in my studio, I have price lists, and I do have a price schedule. I just print it out on sheets. But I have a screening room because we do in-person sales. I don't show a price list. Here's a price list. Tell me what you want. I don't do that because, again, I don't want you to buy off of a list. What do you want? Tell me what you want. Look, if you could have what you wanted, what do you want? Mm-hmm. So it's a whole different philosophy. Again, that goes back to that doesn't change. People still look for that, and they look to be respected. And again, they want their business to matter to the people they're doing business with. Right. That's why I'm a huge advocate. I have never sold online. I had to do some Zooms during COVID, which wasn't ideal, but you have to do what you have to do, because it's all the things that people don't say, the body language, the pause. That's how you do it. It's relationship, and it's a back and forth, and to have that ability is paramount no matter what you do.
So you don't do any online galleries or anything like that, or?
I do a social media gallery with purchase, depends on what they purchase, but a social media gallery. And yes, and that will have a logo on it, and it will be uploaded and they can download that. But I don't sell digital files. I never have. There are exceptions if it's like for a billboard or it's an executive or it's a campaign or something like that where they really do need them. I will do it. I photograph all the new providers for a hospital here in town, and they always get their digital images. So there are exceptions to that. I don't want to say never, but for a portrait client, no, I don't sell digital files. I give them a social media copy.
One of the reasons why I wanted to talk to you was your belief in print, the importance of print, and why it's vital for professional photographers who offer print, because there's sort of this undercurrent in the newbie world of I will come shoot your wedding for $200 and give you a disc, or I'll point you to a smug mug gallery or something. And I don't think you're serving the client very well, because you're kind of leaving a lot of the work up to them. And B, you're not really helping your business at all either. But you've always been very print focused, and you've been much of an advocate for that.
Always. And I wish, and there are people in the industry who have as well. So I know that it's not just me. I wish that our wonderful labs would just huge focus. I'm thinking, gosh, if the labs could join together and just make this huge push for prints. I've always marveled at why that isn't pushed more. If I'm a lab, it's what I do. So I'm going to really make an effort to get that message out.
Well, PPA tried that a couple of years ago, right? Their Print for Success campaign.
They did it, okay. And nothing but love for you, PPA, but I think it was a little behind the ball. I think that that ship had already begun to sail. Hey, we've left the dock. And then here we come behind trying to run after it going, it's important. And I think in order to really, it's kind of, this is where I get excited. It's a very multi-layered issue, why people don't print, why photographers don't even offer it. I always believe that what you don't find important, you will have a very difficult time selling, right? You can play the game and you can pretend it's important to you. But many of today's new photographers do not believe in the printed photo. They don't. And they enter the industry on the heels of someone who I will bet you didn't believe in the printed photo either.
Right.
And so, well, that's just what we do, right? That's like when a client calls you and they ask for how much are all your images? How much are all images, all the digital images? They're asking that because that's what they got the last time. And so they figure that that's the norm, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's the norm because that's what everybody's doing. You must be the odd man out because you're not doing it instead of the other way around. I think that it goes, again, we're going back to a core belief. Why is it you do what you do?
Right.
And I have seen, because I'm in these groups, and so I watch quietly from my dark little corner and I watch what people say. I've seen people say, I know I really should sell prints, but I don't want to hassle with it.
Right.
I know I really could be making a little more money with this, but I wouldn't even know how to do it. It is such a foreign concept, a printed photograph to a freaking photographer.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where the disconnect comes in with me. That they don't even know where to start. People don't want to do it because they're afraid of selling. Oh, I got to sell it then. You know, I have to do a sale that involves me. They just want to be one and done. I meet them, I shoot it, I upload it. I never have to see them again. I go to Costco and spend my $150. If that's your business philosophy, who am I to say that that's wrong for you? I'm just saying it's not sustainable.
Right. And there's a market for that. I mean, there's always been that's sort of the, what I would say the equivalent of sort of the chain store photo, right? Going to JC
Right.
or whatever back in the day, right? Where it's more of a utility type thing, but you're not capturing the cherished moments, the special moments, the wall-worthy moments, if you want to come up with a phrase, where you're saying, yeah, this is the heirloom print or whatnot. How much of your business is that sort of thing versus the just regular graduation photos and all that kind of stuff? I'm trying to get a
sure. Well, when you say an heirloom portrait, what do you mean by that?
Well, like the family that's framed sitting behind the couch.
Everyone has a different goal. I can tell you for me, I will work, if we're talking about, there's different kinds of sessions.
Sure.
We all shoot for what we want our finished product to be, or at least we should be doing that.
Right.
So when it comes to families, my goal is always a wall portrait. That's if they don't leave with a wall portrait, I probably haven't done my job. And they might not. It's not like every client leaves with a wall portrait, but if it's a family session, I shoot for a wall portrait. If it's a senior session, I shoot for an album because I want them to buy 40 4x6 to 8x10 images in a book or a box. I want that. That is my goal. I want to make it hard for them to pick. I don't want them to narrow it down. I know some people shoot, like seniors, they want to do the clusters on the wall, like the photo clusters, wall portrait clusters. But that's, for me, that's what I do. That's my goal. I go in with that notion. It also affects where I shoot as well. So that's my goal on each and every session. I don't do mini sessions. I don't run sales. I used to. I remember doing Valpak coupons back in the day and those sorts of things. When I go in a store and they're like, do you have a coupon for this? And I'm like, no. And they say, my question is, can I have the coupon price? Because I'm here and I'm buying the thing.
Right.
Why do I need a piece of paper? So that mentality has stayed with me all my life. And I extend that in my sales room, because if a client is in front of me and they're placing this amazing order and I can do something to sweeten the pot for them, or something that makes them feel special because they are special to me, I know they have a choice and they came to me, I'm going to do that. So every session, back to your question, every session that I shoot from the beginning to the end, even through the editing process, it's not like, these are just 5x7s. It doesn't matter. I will retouch it like it's a wall portrait because it's my name on it and it's important.
Some people would argue that's a very 20th century approach. And we all know there's not a lot of photographers with that approach who have survived. So what did you do differently?
When you say what part of that is that a 20th century approach? What part of it?
You've got a sales room, you've got the packages that you present. You have a price list and all those. You're not doing a lot online, online,
No, I don't.
online ordering, nothing like that.
So I'll do a quick correction. I don't show a price list unless they request
Right.
one.
I know that.
Right. And I don't necessarily do packages. I do offer some for seniors, but I don't do anything in a package, because then you have to get what I want you to have instead of what you want to have.
Right.
So how about I just cluster it for you? Tell me what you want, I'll make a package for you.
Right.
That I bundle it for them. As far as in person, I tell you what, when back in the day, Gary, people said Kodak in the early 90s came out with their prism system. Do you remember the prism system?
Oh, sure. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I think the second studio in New Mexico to get the prism system. And the prism
Now, for
system,
those who don't remember, can you say what the prism system was?
I can. The prism system was basically, at the time, everything was film.
Right.
And so I shot Hasselblad, so I shot square. And below the camera on a monopod was this big video capture, if you will. And it would capture at the same time on this little video card, the same image that the camera was capturing on film. It was a precursor to digital.
Right.
It was
There's a beam
changer.
splitter or something in there, and that's why it was called the prism, because it split the image.
It changed what I did, because up until that time, in order for a client to see what they had paper proofs. There was no other way to see it. You had negatives, and in order to see the image, I mean, you had to do that. Some people would project, they'd project the proof, or
right. I remember that. Yeah.
Right. Projection rooms. It never did that. Prism system came along, and I started selling on a great big 19-inch TV, and it was in a little sales room. And really, I thought, this is an investment. I don't know if it's going to work. It worked great. And everyone at the time's like, oh, you'll never be able to do it. People are going to want to see proofs. It'll never work. It worked beyond my wildest dreams. So when digital came along, and people were like, you got to post them online because everybody wants to see them online. I thought, well, do they? How personal is it, Gary, when I meet you and we talk about what you want for your family's photo, for example, how important it is to you, and when was the last time you guys did this? And you might have kids coming in from out of town, and we spend this wonderful time getting to know each other. It could be even over the phone, and then we meet, and it's a great time, and we get everything you want, and we laugh and kind of give you a little sneak peek on the back of the camera, and shake hands. It was a fun time, so much more fun than I thought. Then all of a sudden, you and I have formed this relationship, and bam, I stick those digital images on an online gallery. All of a sudden, between you and me is this thing called a computer. Ugh. It's horrible. It's horrible. I'm not there as you see them. I'm not there to answer questions you might have.
Right.
You're going to have all these things rattling around in your head. I can't help influence that by giving you my opinion. What can or can't be done. You don't have those options in front of you. Oh yeah, I could give you a brochure, in the words of Jeffrey Gitomer. No, I'll be there to answer those questions. Again, harking back to the Zig Ziglar topic, those things don't change.
Right.
Those things don't change at all. We see it on a huge screen, and clients pick them out. I think those client forward concepts have held me in good stead. Now, when I market with prints. I've got online marketing too. I do my Google ads and things like that. But within my own town, I have a print presence. I am in my airport in 2 locations. I've got a big display right next to the Southwest counter. I'm as soon as you walk in from the parking lot. It's actually a promotion that we do every year with our public schools called the Southwest Senior Program. But the airport is a sponsor, and they put those kids up. Almost every theater in town, I have a print display in the lobby. In the mall, I have a print display. So I'm very print forward on everything I do, so that it's not, you come into the studio, hundreds of prints. I've got catalogs you can go through of 16, 20, so you can just rifle through and get ideas. So it's not a shock to someone that I'm selling prints. Right. So I think you got to show what you sell.
So obviously you've got a great deal of passion for the industry. I think that's what's interesting. I thought it was interesting. You said you were the picture taking, the photography part actually takes the back seat to more of the sales and customer service approach.
Right.
But I have a feeling a lot of the people who get into it these days, almost get into it for the technical side of it or the social side of it, not the sales side of it.
Correct. Well, and I think it's how you treat it's how, again, we go back to what is your philosophy?
Mm-hmm.
And that will direct you going forward. That will determine how you approach everything. I see people online dogging out their clients, and I'm like, oh my, not on my worst day would I share a story. And we all have them.
Right.
This client made me wait for 40 minutes, and then she showed up and wasn't even sorry. And then when you post this, people who aren't your clients will see it.
Right.
And they will wonder, oh, if I use her, will she talk about me too? Or he? There is to some degree, there is a lack of taking the professional out of professional photography since 2008. No, there are people that don't, like I said, they don't treat it like a business, and it becomes a hobby. And you can call it a business all you want because it makes you feel good that you have a business.
Right.
But we both know that it's a whole different ball game.
So how does it? So I'm sure you have to compete against some of those people.
Yeah.
What does that do to the market?
The market has been saturated for a long time, and everybody's a photographer. Everyone says that, which I get a little irritated with. What, me irritated? I don't think it's everybody's a photographer. I think that everybody is a camera, and I think that that's a better way to look at it. And it's to the point where it's changed a little bit the way I interact with potential clients, because there is a marked difference in philosophies, and you'll see that in the outcomes too, in the outcome of the experience and the outcome of the final product. And we all get lumped together, right? Like, oh, all the photographers. And so, I have a storefront. I've had commercial space for a million years. And I think it's really important. I don't know if that's going to change now post-COVID, which is a whole other, game changer when it comes to how we work and where we work. But I think it's important that people know, if you're going to drop a chunk of change, you know where to find me if you don't like it. I've always offered 100% money back guarantee. I mean, period. I will fix it if you don't like it, or I will give you your money back. There's absolutely no risk. It's not like, well, and I don't do digitals, so you're doing a print, you have to, you know what I mean? It's not like I can count maybe on one hand in 30 years how many times that's happened for one reason or another. Yeah, so I take the risk out of it because that's how strongly I believe in what it is that I do.
So you've mentioned sort of the post-COVID world, and we're recording this, as things are starting to open up. What do you think the post-COVID world is going to look like for things like conferences, trade shows, seminars, things like that, in terms of how people gather and share information? Because there's the school of thought that, well, everyone's kind of moved online and that's just the way it is. But I think there is, since we're human beings, a need to actually meet and interact.
I agree. I think there is a hunger. And I think that a lot of people, including myself, didn't realize how strong that hunger was to meet and hug and touch and see face to face and see expression and do everything face to face,
right?
Not just real time, but face to face in the same place. I mean, if you look around, this was a question that was asked to me during the height of the pandemic. It's like, I'd get these messages. What do you think is going to happen? And I'm like, how anxious are you to go on vacation? Because I know I really am. And I see, having just gotten back from vacation, people are out and people are ready to engage in this thing called life. They're ready to eat at restaurants, and they're ready to take trips, and they're ready to go watch a baseball game. And so I don't foresee that changing for the industry. I think people want to congregate. I've always said I learn more with a drink in my hand in the hotel bar, talking with other photographers, than I do in almost any seminar or program I've attended.
No, it's true. I mean, that was always like the strength of the PMA program too, was the social aspect, right? I mean, that aspect of it. I mean, I think a lot of industries and conferences are like that. It will just be interesting to see what happens, because in the trade show world, clearly there is a lot of stress among the camera manufacturers, right? To, instead of going to every show, they were pick and choosing which show to go to. And the labs reducing their space for a variety of reasons and things like that. So I think when it comes back, and I do think things are going to come back, it is going to be very, very different. I think the model is going to shift a little bit to
Mm-hmm.
maybe they'll actually may have to charge more for the conference piece because there won't be as much trade show to offset the cost.
Well, and I think that, and hopefully this is getting back to what we talked about earlier again. Hopefully, can I be in charge of picking people? I always say that. Ask me, I can tell you. You want to know? I had somebody once, Gary, who was upset with something WPPI was doing. WPPI had a thing where they had, you can be a rock star, and they use those words. And it was, you send in this, I don't know, 3-minute tape of why you should be on the WPPI stage. And not picking on WPPI, they did this. Why you should be on the WPPI stage. And then they're going to have whoever they have is going to judge it. And they're going to pick the next featured program giver at the next WPPI. And I had somebody who sent me a message who was livid. Now I was kind of like, yeah, that's vetting them. I'm like, what are we doing here? So you're basing this on a video, or is there anything else that has to happen? Or do you know what's credentials or experience, or, can you prove that you are a financially viable, successful business, or do you just take you at your word? So this guy was upset. He was really upset. And he sent me a message and he's like, can you believe they're doing this? And he sent me the link. And then sheepishly at the end of the conversation, he said, I would say something, but I still want to be a speaker for them. Dude, what? So there's a lot that needs to go on, I think. And I think that there does have to be changes. And hopefully going forward, people will thirst for the real and the true and the honest. And we're going to get rid of this. I'm sure there will always be there to some degree, because it probably always has been to some degree.
Well, there's a lot of competing interests at a show, right? I mean, you've got the need of the attendees to get content. Right. There's also a need for the exhibitors to share their messages on their new products and services. There's also a need of the conference organizers to somehow make a buck at the end of it, which is not as easy as it sounds. Everyone thinks putting on a show is easy, but it's not. And so, and not, a lot of times those interests aren't always moving in the same direction. That's a challenge for a lot of organizations, especially those who rely, like PMA did, on, the trade show for the majority of their revenue.
And that's fair. I come at it more from an educational standpoint, and I don't think I always give enough allowance to, like you just said, there are other, there are people who want to sell their product, and
And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, as a salesperson, you have to agree that selling your product is a good thing.
Hey, God bless. No, I agree.
Going forward, as we draw this to a close, what do you see as positives and challenges through 2021?
I think that photographers are going to have to, and I don't know with the vaccine and the new guidelines that are surrounding that, like if you're vaccinated, you should wear a mask. During the pandemic, I always thought that the outdoor portrait photographer had it made. 6 feet apart, check.
Yeah.
Uncrowded space, check. Contact free, check. There were all those boxes were ticked. But the problem is that a large, I don't know, probably half the population was freaked out. So, they were like, if I take my mask off and I'm in the middle of the forest, it's going to jump at me from the trees. They were worried, and people were definitely freaked out about it. So I think there was hesitation on the public side as far as generating interest. I think going forward, I look at other industries. I look at the restaurant industry. I look at the travel industry. We're working differently. We're seeing that we don't need commercial spaces as much. Working remotely. I have a family member who works for Zillow, and he's like, just kind of shut us all down. And then, he was on the West Coast, and he's just working from home.
Right.
So there's a lot of businesses that can do that. I think we're going to get past the point of people being freaked out about it. I do think that that's going to happen, and because we're seeing it more and more as travel begins again. I think that it's hard because we saw a lot of people close their businesses during COVID. Like, I just can't do it. I just can't do it. And the businesses that survived through COVID were very strong, but they have to keep implementing. I think that the biggest thing that we do when times are lean is we tend to pull back on our marketing. I gotta market less because I gotta hold on to that money because I gotta pay rent, or I've got to pay this, or I've got bills, when it's actually the worst thing you can do.
Right.
Because you've got to continue that presence within your community and within your marketplace. I like to think, Gary, that we're going to return to business as usual. What that means, with the exception of retail properties. I don't know if commercial spaces are going to
that's going to be the whole different thing, right? Is there's so
and
many...
a lot of people are working from home anyway.
Right.
So I don't know. I never have, so it's kind of hard for me to gauge that. But yeah, I think going forward, if you keep those principles in place, I mean, I would think people are going to want to celebrate. It's like the Roaring 20s, right? We want to do that. We're families getting together again, the reunion. We haven't seen each other in 3 years or whatever. So people are going to want to do that. And I think that if we're primed and ready for it, we can take advantage of that.
I think so too. I mean, I'm very optimistic coming out of it. It'll be interesting to see how consumer behavior has changed, right? And that's something we just don't know yet, right? We have to look at it from a standpoint of, managing your business basics and, I always refer to as blocking and tackling, right? A lot of businesses look for the home run or the touchdown or the 3-point shot. And it's really just a lot of the basics, right?
It is one step in front of the other, day after day, week after week, year after year. And I think that you speak to something very, very true, is that we want to make these ginormous steps. And when it doesn't happen right away, we're like, oh, it must be wrong. And I think, God, if I thought something was wrong because it didn't happen right away. I mean, the joke with marketing was it Henry Ford said half of marketing doesn't work. You just don't know which 50% it is.
Right.
You've got to try the things to know if they work or if they don't. And so you can't assume because this didn't work that this other thing won't, just throw in the towel.
Right.
The notion that every day has to be a great day. And, oh my God, I see people on Facebook with their $20,000 order checks, people taking, my order isn't that, I must be doing something wrong. And I'm like, well, yeah, kind of, but kind of believing what you see on Facebook. You need to stay the course and keep those principles in place.
So it's more about being a roadie than being a rock star.
It depends if you want to do it for a lifetime.
Right. Then you be a roadie.
You want it to be your career path that you will look back on 30, 40 years down the road and say, man, this put my kids through college, and this bought my vacation home, and this allowed me to do these things. And I'm not like the prosperity gospel here. I'm just saying that if you run your business, any business, and if you run it and you grow it and you give to it, and you have to invest time. I always think it's so goofy when people are like, oh, I can just kind of do this and then I make some money. It was awesome. I'm like, no, you're sweating and you're worrying and you're late and you had to reshoot something, or someone was too late and you lost the light and you got to do it again. There's a million things to do every day. Tons of that, just the little piddly stuff that just makes you go, but you got to do it. Right. And we don't talk about that a lot. And so I think people think that, well, if it's not smooth sailing and I keep hitting these roadblocks during my career, during my work, then I must be doing something wrong. And I'm like, no, it means you're doing something right. Because that's how it's done.
Well, thank you, Lynn, for your time and for your wisdom. Hopefully we'll see you in person at an industry event sometime soon. And I hope you have a great 2021.
Awesome. Thanks, Gary. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you for listening to the Dead Pixel Society podcast. Read more great stories and sign up for the newsletter at www.thedeadpixelssociety.com.